We have Tonnaer and Manisha now going to be chatting to us about the challenges of building a responsible denim brand, which is Tony's an expert at. So he's going to be inspiring us all, I think, with his stories. Hi, Tony. Hi, Manisha. Hello. Manisha, are you there?
I'm here. Hi.
We can hear you. Have you got your camera?
You
we can't see. No, we can't see you yet. Well, we see your photo, but it's static. Might be nice if we can have a wave. Maybe whilst we're waiting, we can say that. What do you think are the biggest challenges for you in the next 5 years as a brand?
Oh, there's so many challenges. I mean, we definitely come from a time where there were a lot of challenges in the last 2 years. Challenges we've never experienced before. Such as COVID.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. That's the one thing. Yeah. The big pink element.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a big climate change. Of course, was the big thing, and of course, we as a brand, as Kings of Indigo, started about 11 years ago, launching our brand, being a sustainable brand, moving towards a circular brand, and really we're waiting for retailers, consumers, and the industry to be ready to focus more on this. So we were really ready to roll in 2020 to clean up the market and clean up the production chain and the whole supply chain. And then COVID came, and that of course made the stuff the focus of a lot of consumers, a lot of retailers, a lot of production people very different. So
what biggest change do you have to make because of that are still in situation?
Well, first of all, a lot of retail was closed, so it means a lot of retailers had problems. They didn't sell anything. Of course, our online business was growing, but I mean, still, especially with denim, it's so nice to feel something, to feel your fit, to see a wash or see the selvage or the details. You know, and that's also your 3D body. Super difficult to judge from an online platform to see if you fit these jeans well or not. So I think it's definitely possible, but I mean, still most of our consumers, they buy our products in stores. The great thing was that in COVID times there was a great opportunity to be more online, and also online is a great tool to tell your story and also teach people like this platform you guys created, is to educate people on why you have to consume differently and buy less and buy better. So I think from that perspective, I think it was a great opportunity to think different and to enhance that digitization in many ways, communicating with our suppliers in all these countries, traveling a little bit less, being more effective in your resources. So I think it was quite a good lesson also to clean up your CO2 footprint from a traveling point of view. And
so also, there were some benefits.
There were definitely some benefits. I have to say, 2020 was for us just super tough. I mean, last year we recovered almost from 2020. And this year I see growth again, but of course there's also different political situations going on at the moment and supply chain issues. So I think that's the next challenge. By the time I thought the world is open, the sun is shining, we go out, we go drink, we go consume, we go have fun, and also we clean up the world a little bit and focus on like climate change, sustainability, and buy more responsible. But now there's another focus again of people with a lot of inflation, higher prices, worries for consumers, worries for companies, worries for factories. So it's the next challenge in our industry, I would say.
Certainly is. I see Manisha's online now. We can see you, Manisha. Big wave. So I'll leave her to it. And thank you for being patient with me, Tony. And I'll leave the expert now to interview you.
No.
Hi, Tony. I'm so sorry. I've been online for ages watching, and when it was our turn, I got kicked out. So, but maybe that's not a bad thing. I'm not sure. So did you answer one of the questions with Angela already, or was that just general?
No, we were just talking about...
I literally did spontaneous chat.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're here to talk about sustainability within brands, and you are a prominent Amsterdam-based denim brand, Kings of Indigo, and it's really lovely to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
I wanted to start with a two-part question, and you might have touched on this already. And I wanted to ask you, we see sustainability as a key topic in denim, but where is it really happening, and who really cares? So how and where is the supply chain changing?
Yeah. Of course, I've been busy with this whole topic already since 18 years. And in the beginning, I really thought that we were a bunch of nutcases smoking grass in Amsterdam and being hippie-ish with cleaning up the industry and being more fair and make organic products. I think I see a big change, especially in the industry. I mean, if I look at, for me, the biggest change has been fabric suppliers and laundry. So really have created new techniques, new ways of enhancing and increasing the way recycled products are being created. Organic products have been pushed into the market. Tencel, hemp. I mean, there's been so many alternatives. When we started with Koichi, but also with Kings of Indigo, even in 2010, it was super hard, and we had to develop everything ourselves with the fabric suppliers as a small brand to create this. But I mean, especially the last 5 years, I think every main denim mill has been really working on like a reasonable part, or sometimes a really big part, in a collection of sustainable fabrics, from raw materials, dyeing, finishing point of view, and also on the laundries, of course, with all laundry part, to really focusing on using less water and chemicals and carbon footprint. So I think this is amazing. If I look further down the chain, if I go to the shopping streets of Amsterdam, I'm still pretty disappointed what I see in reality. And also with most brands, I think all the marketing departments of all the big brands have found sustainability as the main topic. If I go into the store, it's still relatively small. And I also see with a lot of bigger retailers, they all want to be more sustainable, but in the end, they look at sell-through numbers, and in my true opinion, most of them have not enough perseverance to push this product into the market and educate consumers, teach them, give them information in an easy way. So I think that's still one of the biggest parts is. Where it's hard is in retail to get this, this whole new way of thinking. If I see in Germany, our biggest market, I see a lot of eco stores, specialized eco stores. They're acting as curators for consumers. If you come to our store, everything you buy here is fairly made and ecologically made, and we give you a lot of information. So I think that's great, and that for me that's a great example for a lot of retailers. Maybe a little bit less extreme, but still acting as like a good information force, an education force for consumers, how they can buy different and what they have to pay attention to. So in that perspective, I think there's still a long way to go. And I think in our industry, we talk all the time about this. If I look in the shopping streets, it's still pretty disappointing, to be honest.
Yeah, it's actually great that you touched on laundry, because one of my questions actually was, how sustainable are these alternatives to conventional washing? But actually, more than that, what you also touched on is the consumer. And I often wonder, how aware is the consumer? And I'm talking about the average consumer. Do they actually know when they're getting an alternative, a sustainable alternative, and how sustainable is it? And maybe you can answer the question in the sense of how sustainable are the alternatives to conventional washing, and how can we measure that also for the consumer?
First of all, I think the consumer, the biggest group of consumers is not very aware. If I look at our consumers who buy Kings of Indigo, they are all very, very much interested into the subject of sustainability in a broader perspective in their lifestyle. So maybe doing yoga, maybe eating vegetarian, vegan, having an electric car, maybe having green energy in their home, maybe compensate their CO2 footprint when they fly, or fly less, or go by train, or go by e-bike to work. So I think that there's a growing group of really serious, more conscious consumers. But I think the biggest part is unaware. It's a complicated subject, and that's, I think, where it's really hard. A pair of jeans seems so easy to make, right? It's just a pair of jeans. It's not a rocket. It's not like the most complicated car. But still, it has so many elements in it, from raw materials to the spinning part, to the weaving part, to the stitching, cutting, washing, finishing, accessories. There's so many elements which all need to be cleared up. If you really want to do it right, you need to address all these topics, and that's really hard. It's not as easy as you think. Just buying an organic cotton, what most brands do, they buy organic cotton fabric and say we're sustainable. Welcome with the first step, I would say, and now the rest. And so I think that also makes it so hard to educate consumers. There's no real benchmark. There's no clear IMDb movie rating thing from 1 to 10 or what. There's no kind of like you buy a washing machine from red to green or from A to F. In our industry, there's so many different certifications. There's so many different labels. And that's also why I think people, there was a research recently in the UK that people think Zara is one of the most sustainable brands there is. Yeah, definitely not. So, but if you read a few times, if the marketing department promotes the two organic jeans enough, I think the consumer is easily convinced that it's sustainable. Yeah. And if you look at the difference between traditional washing, of course, there was a lot of chemicals used. There's a lot of water used, and there's a lot of energy used. Still, I think with the new washings, I mean, we try to avoid as much washing as possible. So I think the best thing is buy unwashed denim, buy non-stretch denim, easy to recycle afterwards without any polyester, no lycra, 100% monofiber. I think that's the best way. That's the starting point. So if when you buy more sustainable as a consumer, just buy non-stretch. And happily, the trend is moving towards straight fits and loose fits. Women first, and hopefully later the man as well. But then, of course, buy as dark, as close as possible to the starting color of the fabric, preferably unwashed or rinse wash. I think that saves the most. Of course, if you look at laser ozone or other techniques there, and also especially with the denim mills having like new dyeing methods, which also easier react to a laser, for example, or like an ozone machine. So at the beginning, of course, you started with the 36 dip super dark indigo. If you start with that, still with laser and ozone, it's still really hard to get a light color. It's almost impossible. So I think you need to work together between fabric suppliers and the laundries to get the best results, because then you get the right color with the right look. And if people want to not have this like super dry, cool, unwashed look, but have a little bit more worn-in look, which is way more commercial at the moment, I think it's good to have like to look for like a fabric which is already in that direction, and then wash it slightly with a little bit of laser, a little bit of ozone, just to touch up the color or to freshen up the stuff. So I think, it is a big difference. And I think there's been big progress made, but it's not only about the washing, it's also about choosing the right fabric to wash.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you said it really well in the beginning when you said, welcome to the first step, which leads me to my next question, because it is indeed the first step, and there are so many more steps in the process. And of course, along these steps, there are different methods, different production processes that we can use. But what I wanted to also ask was looking at the global market with production in Asia, consumption in Europe, or generally consumption in the global north. Do concepts like recycling or cradle to cradle, do you think that they really have a chance? A real chance, and also one that is price driven for vertical brands?
Yeah, for price driven, let's start with that.
Yeah.
Jeans is too cheap at the moment.
Right.
So we have to pay more for like a proper garment. So $20 for a jean or $30, $40 is just not workable. We need to go back a little bit to buy less and buy better. That's number one. Number two, I would say we've been sourcing our garments from the start already as close to home as possible. And I think one positive thing about this whole supply chain crisis, with containers prices going through the roof and lead times going through the roof, is that a lot more brands are nearshoring, so moving their production closer to where their market is. So I strongly believe let China produce for China or Asia, and let Europe produce for Europe, and you let America produce for America. And don't move cotton from Uzbekistan to China and then make the fabric there, move the fabric to America, move the fabric from America to laundry in South America, and then ship it to Europe. That doesn't make any sense. So I think the whole supply chain should be as close as possible to the market as possible. And then also I think if you talk about cradle to cradle, it becomes a lot more easier. If we have to ship old garments to Turkey, we just have to make sure the fabrics are clipped so they can be imported. And it's relatively easy to ship it in that direction. It's fast, it's quick. And I think in that way, we are much more able to build up like a more circular economy and being less globalist. I think that's for me, that's the future.
Yeah, I agree. I see that we've got just a couple of more minutes, but I would like to ask you one more question, and that is during the last 2 days, we touched on some social aspects of sustainability in denim. And I was wondering if you could give us, as a closing point, give us your perspective on what social sustainability means in denim, and how can we navigate these waters in our current climate. So, what is your perspective from a brand and a producer and someone that's been in the market for a long time, and really someone that is is an expert in denim? Yeah,
I think if you look at the whole sustainability subject, that has to be looked on holistically, and most brands at the moment, because it's has a lot of media attention, is about the ecological part, about climate change. So everyone focus on organic, recycled, and that part. But as important for me is the social part. So pay a decent salary and make sure that the working conditions for the workers are decent. You pay a decent price, you pay a reasonable price. It doesn't have to be super cheap, it doesn't have to be super expensive as well. But I mean, you have to make sure that you take responsibility for the factories you work with and make long-term partnerships with your factories you work with. Without Denim Factory, we've been working since day one, and I wouldn't chase very easily. Of course, we added a 1 second source because our volume was growing, also to balance the risk a little bit, or like I have a different handwriting. But I strongly believe in long-term relationships where you work as partners and don't look at the supplier versus brand or like a buyer kind of power. And also you have to look deeper into the chain. So you have to be really serious with taking care about the salary level they pay, the amount of holidays, the extra work. So we used to work with Fair Wear Foundation a lot. And also we follow now the ILO standards. I think that part has been really neglected a lot because, of course, it's less sexy, I guess, at the moment. The environment is more sexy and more easy to understand. But I think it's definitely as important, together with water waste, for water use and waste management and CO2 footprint. I think all these subjects need to be addressed in one product. You need to have a holistic approach in making a total garment and not just focus either on organic cotton or recycled cotton, but to really take the garment from the full perspective and make it a fair and clean product.
I'm really happy to hear you say that, because I also see with the blockchain technology, which is of course the big rage to talk about at the moment, but really it only captures the environmental, it only measures the environmental standards so far. So I'm really happy to hear you also end our part on holistic sustainability and how important that is also on product level. So,
but at least blockchain can give transparency, and I think transparency is the other thing. We show all our suppliers on our website. You can really follow the trace from cotton to closet, and also you can see exactly where the fabric is from, where the product is stitched and washed, etc. So if you're transparent, also that gives the consumer and the retailer in the end like a proper way to really check what you are doing and what kind of certificates they have in their factory from a social point of view and from an environmental point of view. And I think that's super important, that as a consumer, they need to be more critical on what they buy and not just buy.
And let's hope that more brands will follow in your footsteps.
Absolutely. Let's put the passion back into denim and make beautiful products which are fair and cleanly made. And I think then the world will look a lot more beautiful.
Thank you so much for talking to me. I'm going to hand it over back to Angela.
I think there'll be some questions that might be for both of you. So everyone that's listening, please do feel free to put your questions in the Q&A, and I'll try and get to them as we can. And if we don't have time, obviously you could maybe answer them in the Q&A. But the first question we had was, you mentioned about certification, Tony, and see there are lots of different guidelines and different parties giving certain certificates. Do you think the denim industry could be sort of the pioneer of creating one understandable consumer certificate or system ranking?
I think so. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about it. I know the Amsterdam organization House of Denim, led by Mariette and James, they really have been talking about this blue hand approach where you have 5 pillars, 5 fingers, which is social, environmental, water use, carbon footprint, kind of certificate. But the only way to success is to have a global approach. I think there's so many local initiatives which are all really great, really fantastic, but first of all they all compete with each other a little bit and they don't communicate with each other. So I think that the only thing is to do this is by law a little bit, European law at least, or maybe and later maybe UNESCO or global law, and have like one certification for the world, because it's a worldwide business. We don't only sell in Holland or in Germany or in the US. It's a global business. So we need, as an industry, we have that power and we can do that, I think.
So we could maybe link them up with Lucy Brigham from the United Nations Office for Partnerships, who was speaking yesterday. So that might be a good one.
I think that will help consumers so much to make the right choice. And I think they have the power. We need to give them the power.
And I've got a question on that. The Higg Index had a plan for consumer certification. Is this in the near future for AC members?
Great. Like I said, any initiative who launches this plan work together with all the other initiatives and make sure it's one certification and not all different. Because the consumer in the end, they get confused again. They need to be clear. And like I said, for IMDb, for worldwide video, there's one certificate. It's not a certificate. It's a rating. But in the end, it has to be simple.
I think it's not only consumers that are confused. Consume.
Buy their own shopping.
Highly confused. But I also think that it's very confusing for brands, because I think that certifications also have served as gatekeepers in the past. If you didn't have a certificate, it meant that you were not sustainable. And I think we need to move away from that, because it really has to be business driven. And it shouldn't mean that if you have a certificate, then only are you sustainable. I think that, yesterday we had a really lovely panelist who also said, certificates and tools like blockchain are really tools, but, you've got to also drive from the human perspective. What do you want? What do we want as a society? What do businesses want? How do they want to perform? So I think it's also very important for us in the industry, and certainly for us also from an education perspective. Certificates help you to create a framework and to help you understand what is necessary, but they are not the end all. They are not the be all and end all. So I don't know if you agree with that, Tony, but I think.
I think it's a good framework, but I think we've been working a year on this B Corp certificate, and I think that actually entails the whole process, and that gives you also, as a company, you have to show your vision, your whole strategy, and also in all different parts of the business, even your headquarters, your warehouse, transport, the whole supply chain. They ask you to think about it and have a clear statement of what you do and prove what you do. And I think that's quite a nice philosophy, I think, which gives you more like a holistic approach rather than just a certificate.
Yeah, and then the consumer needs to be able to understand what that represents, then the B Corp. So we know, but of course for them it would be nice for them to understand it.
But at least it's a global brand, and I think it's becoming vastly more known. Also, not only in the clothing industry, but also in definitely a lot of other industries. So that helps making it more acknowledged and understood.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. And then I have another question that was asking if you, for a new sustainable brand startup, what would be your advice, Tony? If you go back to your 13 years ago or 18 years ago even? What would you advise new
Well,
startups?
when we started, it was a different world, so I wouldn't recommend the
Yeah.
same things as we had to learn then, because it's a lot. To be honest, it's a lot easier at the moment. There's a lot more available. It's just as a startup brand. First of all, I think you have to focus. Define your. We started with jeans and a few t-shirts, and we've grown our collection a bit bigger. But really try to focus on and do the approach step by step. It's impossible as a sustainable brand to do everything perfect from day one. So we started with raw materials and the social part. Then we added water, less water use. Then we added CO2 footprint, and then we added the waste management stuff. So I think take it step by step and make sure that you don't make that you make targets which are realistic, and you can but show your vision. And I think then you can celebrate each milestone, and then also you can achieve them. Otherwise, you just have to protect yourself all the time. Oh, I didn't achieve it, and you have to protect yourself to the world. Why didn't you achieve it? And you said this, and you didn't do that. So I think, and it's impossible to be sustainable from day one. Same with big companies who want to convert from conventional to sustainable entrepreneurship. It's a tanker. It doesn't move in 1 season, 2 seasons, 2 years. It's a continuous process.
Well, I think that's great advice as well. So be realistic in your expectations and
Yeah.
don't give yourself too much of a task at the beginning. So that's good advice to them. Thank you very much, both of you. Great chat.
Welcome.
Very interesting insights. Thank you very much for joining us.